Hey, before you start listening, I wanted to apologize for some of the audio in these episodes. If I had known at the time that I was going to turn this into a podcast, I would have done things differently. Some of the stories might not be in the order they should be, and some of the audio might cut in and out. This is because I had to edit out our private conversations. I'm grateful for the opportunity I had to be able to visit with Janice over the last few years and hear her story. She's an amazing storyteller and has a really neat story to share. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did.
So, start off by telling me your full name and why your parents gave, if you know why your parents gave this name to you, and if you had a nickname.
I don't know why my parents named me Janice, but my full name was Janice McHale Johnson, and now Hayhurst.
Okay, see, and I didn't even know your middle name was McKell, because we picked that for Lainey McKell.
Yeah, and that was Grandma Johnson's. She was Lola Career McHale, and McHale was her birth name.
Okay, so McKell was her father's last name, right?
Yes.
Okay, but she was raised by her grandma and grandpa Career.
Yes.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born on October 12th, 1942 in the Spanish Fork Hospital that was a private hospital. Dr. Preston Hughes owned it.
Oh. I had no idea. Where was the hospital at? I didn't even know there was one there.
2 blocks off Main Street on the west side. Do you know where the old post office was on Main Street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's 2 blocks down on the left-hand side of the road, and it was a white, kind of a rectangle building, 2-story, not very big.
Oh.
I don't even know if it's still there.
No, I don't think it is. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm going to look into it and see.
And Richard was born there also, and I don't know where the Richard came from, but they wanted him to have the same initials as Dad.
Mm.
So it was Richard Alvin Johnson.
Okay. Did the Alvin come from anywhere significant?
Yes. Alvin came from my great-grandpa that raised Mom. That he was Alvin R. Career. So Alvin came from we used to call him Papa when we were growing up. He was our Papa.
Okay. So you guys grew up in Spanish Fork. How did you guys grow up? Like, how did they come to live there, Grandma and Grandpa Great?
Well, our first home, we lived there on Main Street, across the street from, let's see, what was the address? You know where 3rd South is?
Yeah.
That you go up the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you stay on Main Street, past 3rd South, and there's I don't remember if it's the 3rd house from the corner or the 4th house, but we lived there with Papa for, I'm not sure how long, but he raised a few pigs. And my mom was really OCD at cleanliness. And so Papa, she was OCD about when we ate. Like, you ate breakfast at 7 o'clock, you had lunch at 12, you had supper at 5:30. So Papa would take Richard and I down to Safeway's, or the Food Liner, either one of them, and get us a maple bar and a Coke. And then he picked up the old fruit and vegetables that they couldn't sell anymore but were still good. and he'd take us back to the house, and he'd sit one of us on each side of him, and he'd cut off the bad parts, throw them to the pigs, and he would give the good part to Richard and I. Well, you can just imagine what Mom said. And she would be so frustrated with him, and he would say, "Oh, Loa, it's good enough for the pigs, it's good enough for the kids." And so she'd say, "Papa, please don't take the kids right before lunch. They don't eat." "Oh, it won't hurt them, Loa." And so we were really close to Papa. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, Hannah B., she died before I was born, so I didn't know her. There were kids across the street from us, either going east or going south, and we used to have snowball fights. And I don't know where I learned this, but I was always getting Richard into trouble. And I taught him how to put a rock in the middle of the snowball. And so one day we threw the snowball, several of them, and we missed the kids and hit a car, the windshield, and it must have hit just right because it smashed the windshield. And we knew we were in trouble. So Richard and I ran into the house underneath the bed. Mom was right behind us. And she said, "Who threw the rock?" And of course I said, "Richard did." So the guy came to the door, and we had to do jobs to pay it off.
That's awesome.
And then what I forgot to tell you was when we were down on the house on Main Street, Mom would polish our shoes and wash our shoelaces when she put us down for naps.
Wow.
So we always had to have clean shoes and shoelaces. And in those days, girls didn't wear pants, no slacks, always dresses. And there was this little girl that lived on the corner, and she had these beautiful long ringlets. She always, I guess in my mind, she always looked just perfect. So I talked Richard into cutting off 3 of her ringlets at the crown of the head. So we got in a little bit of trouble for that. And then I guess when I was a baby, I was only 11 months old when she came home from the hospital with Richard. And because they kept him in the hospital for 2 weeks. Well, I was very spoiled, just like I am now, and it's a miracle that he lived through his birth years, his beginning, because I would roll him under the bed. She'd prop a pillow on his stomach and put the bottle in. I guess, and this is all from what Mom and Dad said, but I guess I would take the bottle, drink it, and drink the whole thing, and then stick it back in his mouth. I rolled him. I would cover him up with blankets, lay on top of him, and he had really pretty hair, curly. I think I sent your mom pictures, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he had really pretty hair. And so they had us in high chairs by each other, and we always had mush for breakfast. And Mom said she'd turn her back, and I'd take my mush and stick it in his hair so it stood up like mine.
Oh, I love that.
So, a funny story about Grandma. Papa had diabetes really bad and had to have shots, like at least 2 shots a day. So they taught Mom, when she was in junior high and high school, how to give him these shots. She'd just go right at it. She wouldn't shake or anything. Well, she went to California, down to my Aunt Donna's and Uncle Fred's. and they taught my Aunt Ruth to give the shots. Now, you'd have to know Aunt Ruth because she would prick him. I mean, she wouldn't put the needle in. She'd just go with the needle. And Papa would say to her, Mom said, for hell's sakes, Ruth, put the needle in. Give me the shot. So when Mom came back, and then she and Dad were going to get married, he said he was going on the honeymoon with them because he didn't want Ruth giving him any more shots. It took him forever to heal up his arm. She gave him shots for a long, long time. Oh, I didn't think this up, but Richard did. So we used to get a quarter for babysitting each other. Mom and Dad were very, very good money managers. We weren't poor, but they saved to put this wallpaper on. It was so ugly. I remember the big roses, but she was really proud of it. Well, they'd gone out, and Richard decided that we were going to cut a golf ball open and see what was inside. So we started to cut on it, broke through the outer skin, got into the middle. When he first punched a hole into the middle, white paint just started flying all over. So it got all over this wallpaper. And do you remember the green matelassé couch they had?
Mm-hmm.
That was a prized possession. And oh my gosh, you ought to have seen that couch. It had white paint. I thought my mom was going to skin us both alive. She's a little upset with us. What else did we do in that house? We did a lot of things in that house.
What was the house like? How many bedrooms was it? I mean, you lived in different ones, so they kind of gradually upgrade, bigger house, more bedrooms, or how'd that work out?
Not more bedrooms, but a little bit bigger. But the yard, it had a garage. I believe it's still there. Dad and Mom and Richard and I dug out the basement on the north side of the house and put a room down there for Richard. And then on the south side of the house, that's where she did her laundry. And this is interesting, how we did the laundry. They saved and bought a twin tub Dexter. And the rollers, the garments were washed first, then the white sheets. And so as you'd wash, you had what they called tub saver sinks. So as you drained the washing water, it would go into a tub, and then the rinse water would go into another tub. And so you use the same water as you wash the clothes. So then you'd go down to colors, and then the jeans were last. And Grandpa, I don't know if you ever noticed the scars on his left arm.
No, I didn't.
Well, he was helping his mother do laundry and got his arm caught in the roller. And so it kind of damaged the skin. Grandpa, well, we always hung the clothes out on the line, but Grandpa used to raise the most beautiful roses. He just had a knack for gardens. And Richard picked that up from Dad, and Scott picked that up from your grandpa. Then we moved. That house had a full basement. I had a bedroom on the main floor, and Richard's was down on the bottom in the basement. And then eventually it had a kitchen and a living room with a fireplace and 3 bedrooms downstairs. And one of the bedrooms was really big. We had a pool table and a ping pong table in there. So then we had 2 bathrooms when we finished that basement. And then I left for college, and they didn't they didn't sell that house until all the grandkids were born. But that was a really hard sale for the grandkids because they had so many fond memories. Oh, in that house, I don't know if you remember how all the candy and cookies and cheese balls and all this stuff that Mom used to make for Christmas, and your grandpa and your Grandma Fancy had Lurch, a big St. Bernard. And Mom was not fond of dogs. And Richard, they lived in Texas. Richard said, I'm not coming home for Christmas if I can't bring Lurch. Well, Lurch has to stay in your bedroom, she said. So we always went over to Aunt Helen and Uncle Cleve's on Center Street there. The house is not there anymore. We'd always walk across the street and go see what the kids got for Christmas. Well, Richard didn't shut the door quite tight in the bedroom, and she had the whole spread laid out on that coffee table. And she said, the first thing she said as we were walking out of the house, now is Lurch locked up? Yes, Mom, yes, Mom. We came back, and Ed and I got in the basement first. There was nothing, not a crumb left on that table. Lurch had peanut brittle, he had English toffee in his mustache. All the punch was gone, all the cookies, all the candy, the breads, everything. And he got so sick. He didn't get to sleep in the house. He was out in the garage, and she never forgave Richard for that. For a little while. And your grandpa was the favorite. He's a favorite child. But Lurch lost his happy home being in the basement. But I only spent, well, I'd come home and work in the summer before, well, and I did after we were married when Ed was, I'd come home for summers and work at Del Monte. I did all the weighing of the trucks and grading and that, the tomato trucks. But one thing, Grandpa and Grandma always made sure that we, forever I'll be so grateful, they taught us good work ethics. We started with just babysitting and mowing lawns, and our friends would say, well, what are you doing that for? And Dad said, are they getting paid for doing what you're doing? No. Okay. So you're saving money. You're making money and saving it. But they really did teach us great work ethics. Really good work ethics.
That's awesome. You've kind of described Grandma Great's personality. If there's anything else you want to add to her personality, but describe the personalities of your other family members as well, including yourself.
We were really close to Aunt Ruth and Uncle Jim. So that would be Ann and Susan and Sherry and Kay and David and their grandma. But they treated us like grandkids, Richard and I. And Aunt Ruth was my grandma's sister. So she was my Grandma Loa's sister. And she was Mrs. Clean, too, like Mom. And I remember we came home from Oklahoma with Michelle when she was 6 months old. And have you met Susan and David Oldroyd, the brother and sister?
I don't think so.
They've moved to Spanish within the last 5 years. Mm. But anyway, Susan and Michelle are the same age. So Aunt Ruth, all the time she's chewing me out. Janice, You got to sterilize those nipples. You got to sterilize the spoon. You got to sterilize the pan before you can put that formula in there for Michelle. And the whole time she's doing it, she's got a sucker. And she takes a lick, she gives Michelle a lick, and then she gives Susan a lick. And then she'd go through this, and I need to sterilize this. And so she was just really funny. But they were the grandparents that I was really close to. My Grandma Johnson died on my 8th birthday, the morning of my 8th birthday. I knew her, but she wasn't in the best of health when I was growing up. And then my Grandpa Johnson, he and I were pretty close. I'd go over to Springville and stay with him, and he taught me how to drive a car when I was about 9 or 10. And so I would drive him from the house in Springville down to Safeways and back and pull into a single-car garage. And the first time I did that, I forgot the brake, and the clutch had to be in at the same time, and I hit the end of the garage. But your Grandpa Johnson, your Grandpa Gray, he was so mad at his dad. My dad never really lost his temper. He was always very calm. But I remember that day when he found out I'd driven the car. I didn't know Mom had a baby brother that died at 6 months, Bobby. And then when my Grandpa McHale remarried, she never spent a night with her dad. And she has 5 brothers and sisters, half brothers and sisters. But they were almost like strangers. They didn't ever, and I don't know them, but Grandpa Johnson had 9 brothers and sisters, or he was the 9th one, and I knew all of them. I was really close to them. And my personality, I was mischievous, but I was a pleaser. I always wanted to do what I thought would make them happy. One time, Mom and Dad went to a PTA meeting, and I don't remember why Richard didn't go with me ice skating, but I went down to the ice skating pond with a group of people to play hockey. And I was the goalie, and Preston Hughes' son, Jay Preston, is my age, and he skated in too fast and hit me and broke the main bone in my right leg to where it come out of the skin. And I didn't know that. And I remember Dad saying to me when I left, now for hell's sakes, if you fall down, get back up and skate. Because I just got my arm out of a sling. I'd hurt my elbow. And I had to be in a sling. So I got up and skated. Well, anyway, this bone came through. So they took me home, and only Richard was there. So Richard decided that I needed to get in the bathtub, and we pushed the bone back in.
Oh my gosh.
So when Grandpa and Grandma came home from the PTA meeting, I was in the bathtub, and Richard was trying to get the bone back in. So then they took me to the hospital, and I was in the hospital a couple of weeks, and Preston Hughes charged us full price, and his son was the one that broke my leg. So I always tell Jay Preston that he owes me. I was the youngest in my class. I was still going to primary when I was in junior high. That first 2 months of school, I was still in primary. But I I was always never athletic. Never, never, never. I tried. We had to have tennis, and I would hold the racket with my right hand and try and hit the ball with my left hand that had nothing to do with it, or didn't have anything in it. I was always the last one picked in class. So I was on the student council. I was a student body secretary. No, I student body vice president over events and historical.
I think one of the times I talked to you, you told me about some of the games that you guys played growing up.
We always played outside. We'd have supper, and then we could go out until dark, and we played Rover, Red Rover. We played Kick the Can. We played dodgeball. But inside games, Grandpa and Grandma taught us card games when we were really little. So we played canasta and hearts, and we didn't play gin rummy till later. Not pinochle. We played a form of matching, but it was with regular cards. They didn't have like the card games that you probably grew up with, that were like Go Fish and those kind of cards. But we played with regular cards. And then later, when we were like in high school, maybe even in junior high, they did teach us to play some poker. But we did play a lot of canasta. So hand and foot didn't start with us until after we were married, and Mom and Dad taught us that. But we got pictures of Mom with Aiden when he was a baby and when Ryan was a baby, and they're sitting here at our house. Like Ryan is only like 6 months old, and she's got him sitting on a table holding a hand of cards. Cards were really important to us. Every Sunday night, we made homemade ice cream. Mom fixed a roast. We'd have that at noon in between church meetings. It was a great evening because we got to use the TV trays. And so we'd get a roast beef sandwich, potato chips, and a Coke. And we put the TV trays up in the living room and listen to the radio, to the old shows, Fibber McGee and Molly and The Lone Ranger and all those old radio shows. That was a big deal. Oh, we used to always go down. We'd clean house, all of us, the four of us would clean the house on Saturday mornings, do the laundry, and then Saturday after lunch, we'd go to Main Street, park the car, go into the drugstore on the corner. Anyway, we'd get an ice cream cone, and we'd sit in the car and watch the people go by. We did that every Saturday we were home. And I grew up with parents that were very active in the church, had a lot of callings, were in the stake, Mary and Relief Society, and Dad they were both very active. And then after they retired, Michelle wasn't very old. I think it was in between Michelle and Pamela. So it must have been about 67. They had pulled more and more away from the church, and they took their garments off that year.
Did they ever come out and say anything about the reasonings behind that, or what their thoughts and feelings were?
Yeah. They let things that people did get to them. But the interesting thing they always wanted to know where we were at in the church, like what callings we had and what we did. And when Scott went on his mission, they were always very supportive of coming up when they were baptized or set apart with the priesthood. But when Scott went on his mission, they came up, and Scott wanted Grandpa Johnson to say the opening prayer and Grandma Hayhurst to say the closing. And we were walking out the door still, and Mom and Dad said, Scott, if you don't want to go, it's fine. You don't have to have this farewell. And Scott just stood up to him and said, no, I want to go on a mission. I need to go on a mission. I'm going on a mission. And so my dad said the most beautiful prayer I've ever heard. And from then, their whole tone changed. We'll support you. We'll write to you. Dad would buy the Playboys that had articles about Charles Barkley. So they'd rip him out of the Playboys and send him the Playboy articles on his mission. So his companions just, they didn't have that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite toy from your childhood that stands out to you?
I had two. I was into dolls, collecting them, but I didn't play with them a lot. But two dolls, and I don't know why. One of them was a Tony doll, and I could comb her hair and braid it and do all this stuff to it. And then a Betsy Wetsy. And I used to feed it its bottle with the Betsy Wetsy with her diaper on, and I don't know how it magically did that, but there was a hole in the bottom of the doll, and the water I'd put in her bottle, she'd pee in her diaper. And I remember that was just the greatest thing to me, just magical, that Betsy Wetsy could wet her diaper. I like to dress up to an extent. Mom, they pretty much picks out the clothes in a lot of ways, but I have a dress. I have a picture of it. I hated that dress. It was black. I love black, and I love pink. But the dress had little pink flowers on it, and the whole skirt was about an inch ruffle of pink all the way over it. And I'm not a pink, frilly type of person. But Mom loved that dress. So we have 2 or 3 pictures of me in that dress. I just hate that dress. If I could have found it, I'd have burned it. I hated that dress. But Richard and I were king and queen of the 24th of July when we were like 3 and 4 or 4 and 5. And so we rode on the float. I got a little crown. I got a long white formal on. Richard's got kind of a tuxedo. And he's white awkwards. That's what he called them. Once I moved away, I did not know that the whole United States, it wasn't a holiday.
Yeah.
We were in Oklahoma, and I said, Ed, what are we going to do on the 24th? I won't have to work, and you won't either. And he said, Janice, you have to work, and I have to fly. It's not a holiday. Man, that broke my heart. So we tried to go home most years when we were in Oklahoma and Alabama. We would go back for the 24th of July. But it was really close to Richard and I. But it did start when we were really young.
Mm-hmm. Growing up, did you have any, you talked about Aunt Ruth. Did you have any other cousins or any other family member that lived in the area that you guys were close with?
Ed and I were the grandchildren that left the state when he joined the Air Force and was flying. We were the only grandkids that didn't live in Utah County for a long, long time. So I was really close to my Johnson cousins, Susan and Diane and Lisa Johnson, Uncle Alan's kids. Mary Bates in Springville, we were really close. She and her sister Carol and her brother Dean. But all those grandkids, we used to get together every Thanksgiving with the Johnsons. And Mom and Dad would kind of head it up. And we used to come to the house, but there became so many of us, we'd rent the roller rink or in Springville, the roller skating, or we'd rent a building. And I think the last time we were together in a house, she must have been about 14 months, 15 months old. And we were downstairs, and I believe your grandpa and Ed were just getting ready to go to Vietnam. Anyway, that was the last time that they were ever in a home, all the Johnsons. And there were like 75 or 80 of us. So I was very close, very, very close to my Johnson cousins. Mom made chili sauce, and Papa loved chili sauce. And she made chili sauce in 2-quart bottles. And he would have a dish of chili sauce every night before he went to bed.
He'd just eat it plain?
Oh, yeah, just like a bowl of tomatoes.
Oh, wow.
Those tomatoes, he loved it. And we have one grandchild, Austin, loves chili sauce. Eats chili sauce on a lot of stuff.